What kind of fucked up movie was that, J-Law? What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Mother. Yes, I said the title like that because there is an exclamation point at the end of it, so stylish emphasis. By the way, I'm going to be announcing the winner of the giveaway contest that I held last week, so you may skip to the indicated time frame to find out who won. Now, the plot to Mother basically follows a young housewife played by Jennifer Lawrence who lives in an extravagant house out in the middle of nowhere that she is renovating with her older husband, played by Javier Bardem, and he just so happens to be a poet with serious writer's block. This couple's seemingly tranquil life gets turned upside down when one night a mysterious stranger, played by Ed Harris, shows up to their home, and then his wife, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, follows, and then more weird things ensue. Going into this movie, I had quite a bit of interest to see it ever since the first poster for it was revealed this past Mother's Day, fittingly enough, with Jennifer Lawrence's character illustrated to be pulling her heart out of her chest. And that just looked so twisted. Not much about this movie was known until about a month ago when the first trailer for it was released. It looked so messed up. It immediately became one of my more anticipated movies for the rest of the year. This movie is written and directed by Darren Aronofsky, and he is no stranger to controversy throughout his entire career, yet I think he is a notable filmmaker. Requiem for a Dream is a shocking yet great movie in my eyes. My favorite movie of his is Black Swan from 2010. That movie, I think, is just about perfect in every way. It's a bona fide masterpiece. Another shocking film at that, though, but I think it is just phenomenal. And even his most recent film before Mother, Noah, I really enjoyed, despite me being very well aware that it's a super loose retelling of the biblical story, yet I'm not that religious of a person, and just how it was made as a movie, I found it to be outstanding. So with Mother, Aronofsky certainly set himself up for another strange outing. With the cast and their performances, like Aronofsky's past movies, this director definitely brought out the A-games from all of the major players in this film. Jennifer Lawrence, I've said this many times before in the past, J-Law is my favorite actress working in Hollywood today, and her incredible performance in Mother backs me up in having me love her even more. This is a challenging role for her. She plays a somewhat innocent character in this movie who is not aware of the total situation that she is living in with her older husband, played by Javier Bardem. But we see the movie entirely from her perspective for the most part. We follow the back of her head walking throughout this very big house, over-the-shoulder camera shots, even her face is seen a lot throughout this entire movie. We just see her walk around this house barefoot in its entirety. Yeah, I wonder why she didn't wear any socks or shoes. She could get sick walking on cold, hard floors. And even in the first half of this movie, she's wearing a very thin nightgown, and we see her chest region. I was very surprised to see that. But in any sense, Lawrence and how much her performance escalates as the movie progresses definitely is a sight to behold. J-Law even apparently dislocated a rib and punctured her diaphragm or something along those lines because she was hyperventilating so much while making this movie. So that shows how deep and intense the filmmaking process was. She is excellent in this movie, as is Javier Bardem as her said older husband. I love the chemistry that they had together. Even if it was very odd, the dialogue from all the characters in this movie is somewhat stilted, but I think it was done on purpose to make us want to know more with what is happening throughout this entire film. But with Bardem, he never goes over the top in the movie necessarily. He gives a subtle performance like Lawrence, but again, as the movie escalates, then the performances escalate as well. We also have Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer as this mysterious couple that shows up at this house too. They are also great. Other major players do show up in this movie too. I do not want to give away who does. have appearances in this movie, but everyone in this movie simply does superb jobs. The writing in this movie is where we get to the meat of the film along with the direction. Like I said before, Darren Aronofsky wrote and directed this film, and he apparently wrote this script in 5 days. Crazy. 5 days in a fit of rage, or just like with a lot of emotion, just of how he felt about the world at the time he wrote the script. And this movie, just from the basic plot synopsis I described at the beginning of this review, does not do this flick justice in what it is really about. Because the way this movie is structured, like I said before, we follow this movie entirely from Lawrence's character's perspective, but how much this movie puts together and a lot of ideas and concepts make it utterly fascinating. From what we see, the movie is already very offbeat when it starts because we do not know what is happening, as the film entirely takes place in this very affluent, very large and grand, and very nice looking house. And at the same time, without giving anything away, this is a very difficult movie to talk about without giving away a lot. The house is very much a character in its own right too, along with the humans in this movie, because of what Lawrence and everyone else is just acting like in the film. It's almost hard to put into words of how the movie even goes about itself. But what I can say with how the movie is even structured and plotted out, the first half of this movie is very much a slow burn. It takes a while for you to ease into what exactly is going on, but when Harris's character and Pfeiffer's characters show up as this mysterious couple, and then more and more people do eventually show up, and then things get a little crazy and crazier and crazier. The movie brings up a lot of symbolism and metaphorical context. It's pretty much as if Aronofsky is breaking film conventions by bringing a lot of metaphors and symbolism to the film, along with the very basic plot that, again, really does not do the movie justice in what it is really about, because there's so much more piled into the movie that makes a lot of thought be brought up into it, and definitely a lot of people are not going to be into that because they want a more direct story as opposed to something that will make them think long after the movie. And that's what Mother did a lot for me. It's true that movies don't necessarily have to follow conventions all the time here, but because of how transfixed I was with the movie, it really didn't matter in my eyes because of how much the movie was really going for it and just leaving me perplexed, but also very intrigued at the same time. Again, with the first half of the movie being pretty slow, once the second half of the movie does hit, I pretty much understood the big messages and themes that Mother was going for. I grew up in a Mexican Catholic household, so I did understand what Aronofsky was going for with the biblical themes within Mother and with his previous movie, Noah, too. Yet the movie, of course, kept going in its 2-hour running time, which it is a lengthy movie at that. I did feel like this movie was that long in certain areas. Again, the pacing at the beginning of the movie tended to be slow, but then the movie does keep going and going and going for how much it is trying to shock you and just leave you in utter awe when the insanity does occur. Within all of the insanity that does occur in the second half of this movie, I was left in total darkness just of what was going on. A lot of brightness and darkness at the same time, and how fucked up this movie really is. It's really a mindfuck when you want to describe this movie simply, with how it makes you think a lot, what you're seeing on screen with a lot of disturbing imagery. And this is added on to how Aronofsky does direct this movie too. Like his past films, he mixes in messages with his really stellar direction in general. I mean, with Requiem for a Dream, the moral of that movie was don't do drugs. Black Swan was about how the good and bad aspects of obsession lead you to greatness or failure in your eyes. Noah, again, was a very loose retelling of the biblical story, but what he does with Mother is take a lot of what Noah did, spring it into his own flavors with metaphors and all the other jazz, and just make it all seemed like I was watching something that I have not seen before. Throughout all of this, technically speaking, this is an aesthetically beautiful movie. The cinematography in this film is stunning. A lot of close-ups are even used up on characters' faces to see their expressions and emotions that are put up on screen to identify them with them more, even though they don't have names per se. None of these characters are described by names per se. That won't work with some people, but it certainly did for me. It came off as effective on my end. The production design and how this very gigantic house looks, it made me feel like I was in the atmospheric landscape of this film, being mysterious but also out there in the dark. It got me suckered in. The editing in this movie, even when the movie does go for it in the second half with how fucked up it is, I thought it never strayed too far away from the past. It's like not very choppy in what it does. Of course, the first half of this movie mostly uses a lot of long takes, but also the second half doesn't stray too far from it, like I said. But what else goes into the movie too is its score, which is non-existent. Yeah, there's no music in this movie. The music was originally composed by Johan Johansson, who is notable for working with director Denis Villeneuve a lot. But what I've researched was that him and Aronofsky both agreed that there was not a nice mend with how the score was playing out in contrast to the actual visual medium of the movie. So it makes me curious to see what the score sounded like with how the movie was going down, because without the score, the movie was still effective in getting to me. The problems I do have with this movie do stick out to me, even though you could interpret problems as you having an issue with how the movie is playing out with its script, how it handles its metaphors, if you're offended by all of it. But for me, the issues were more so like the pacing in the first half of this movie does tend to slog. The movie also tended to be unintentionally funny in certain areas with the dialogue and actions that happened with some characters. But what the movie does throughout all the turmoil that ensues was just leave me very engrossed with what was going on. And I'm not going to be speaking for everybody in saying that this movie had me invested throughout, because there are a lot of people, a shit ton of people who have announced pure hate for this movie. This is not a film that is for general audiences. In fact, this movie got the rare title from CinemaScore of having a grade of an F. An F. So lots of people fucking hate this movie. Most critics do like this movie, and I usually don't pay attention to reviews. Even though most of the reviews were positive, there was some trepidation in how positive people were being to this film because of what it does in being not conventional in a sense of a film. This is certainly one of the hardest movies I've ever reviewed, because there's a lot that could be taken for a pure interpretation on a level that gives you a lot of pondering thought and just what you're exposed to by the end of this movie. But for me, I think that's a good thing to be upheld, because movies like these do spark up conversations that are meaningful in getting you to talk about what metaphors, themes, and other things lie in between what the movie is offering. For me, just like how the movie is well shot, well acted, a lot of great things with the writing and direction, even if it left me just bewildered in many areas, even if I think I got what the movie was going for in a metaphorical sense. I really do not want to spoil what this movie was presenting to me and what I thought of it, because this is a film where the less you know about it, the better. And it's still not going to be for people, because I've said this a lot during this past year so far, where there are a lot of movies that are not for everybody, but for Mother specifically, I stress, I emphasize to the utmost level that this is a movie that is not for everybody. I know people are going to be just not understanding of what the movie is going for. Some people have called this movie pretentious even. Yeah. Watching this movie made me feel like I was watching a Stanley Kubrick movie for the first time back in the day, because of how heavy it is with the messages and the core that it is trying to express. And Stanley Kubrick is one of my all-time favorite film directors for how much profound existential thought he brings on with a lot of his movies, but also with the controversy he brings up with a bunch of his films too. And Darren Aronofsky definitely tried to emulate a lot of that with what Mother did in the end. This is going to be a movie that is going to be hailed as a masterpiece or a classic later on down the line. I could see that level of cult status being brought onto this movie. It's going to be debated and talked about for many, many years to come. And for me, I have not stopped thinking about this movie ever since I saw it last night. And for movies that leave a lot with me, instead of being disposable and I forget about them after 2 hours, that's just what brings out a lot of why I am so into cinema in the first place. In terms of how I would recommend this movie, I really liked it as a whole, and I definitely am liking it more and more as I think about it. But when I say that I give this movie a strong recommendation, I definitely recommend it for people to give their own thoughts on it. When I say that, I have an asterisk, a huge one, a huge asterisk with that statement, because you need to know how you are with yourself and how you see movies. Do you want a direct plot? Do you want something that is straightforward and not going to leave you thinking? If you are someone who is open to having a lot of stuff being brought onto you and leaving you thinking afterward, then I really recommend you go see this. My final verdict for Mother is 4 out of 5 stars. Alright, so you either watched the entirety of this review up until this point, or you just skipped to this section because you want to find out who won the digital HD copy code for Get Out. It is time to announce the winner. I have the names of every entry in this bowl. Shaking them up, stirring them around. Alright, grabbing a random name. I think we have a winner. So, the winner for this giveaway contest is Moises Perez. Congratulations, dude. I will be getting in contact with you to send you this digital HD copy code for the movie. I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you to everybody who entered this giveaway contest. I hope to do more in the future. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Mother, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.